Hello and welcome to Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast coming at you weekly. And what a 7 days it has been since the last time we were talking. Larne were top of the league. Linfield were unbeaten in 13 games. Portadown had lost all of their strikers, and Glentoran were on the brink of a crisis. It's all changed now, of course. Glentoran are way past the brink. This week, we take a look at the entire situation swirling around the oval right now. We review an entire game week and a half of matches, and we sift our way through all the latest transfer chat. This week was back to porridge. All of a sudden, you're back in the warm embrace of league action. For some people, it's more like the cold, hard reality of week-to-week football. And with all that's going on, you must think that either I'm a scud or I just bring my guests on for a bad time. If not spending close to an hour in my company wasn't worse enough, this person is in here to dissect the week, not only for all the other teams, but unfortunately the team he follows week in and week out. I am delighted to welcome back onto the podcast a fellow podcaster. It is Matthew Brown from the Shout at the Oval podcast. Hello.
Hey Peter, I can just say that should Glentoran ever win a trophy, I'm expecting a 2-hour-long kicking match special with yours truly here talking about how wonderful we are.
Well, you know, that could have been the case. In October, I was looking at prices for big green banners. I could have a big theming here. I thought, what am I going to talk about the rest of the year? Because right now, at that point, the leaves were falling. So were records for how many goals that you don't concede. It looked as though Conor McDermott was going to score 3 million goals. And look, there is a full game week, like a double game week since the last time I've been chatting to somebody in front of a microphone. So much has moved, so much has happened, ups and downs all over the place. But clearly, in the week that's in it, the headline comes straight from East Belfast. He's only played one game, but in the space of 7 days, you guys are the ones that are creating all the news, or the ones that everybody's paying attention to. And before we get to Larne on Saturday, I want to take it back slightly and get into the bigger picture. So right now, Glentoran are sitting 6th in the league. They had this incredible run, we all know it, at the very start of the season. But right now, results on the field are at historically one of their lowest in decades. Was it 1930s I saw, and they might have losses in a row. But this clearly has not been a 1 week thing. It's been a number of weeks. It's been a number of months. From being early season favourites, running away with the league at that point in time, do you see a moment, do you see a time so far this season where you can pinpoint and go, this is where potentially it all started to go pear-shaped?
I suppose you could say it was that midweek trip to the Glenavon, but even before that, to be honest, we sort of rode our luck at home to Dungannon. Seen someone say the other day, but the Glentoran haven't played well since they beat Larne 4-0, which is probably a fair assessment. You know, that they probably haven't played well since then. But once that first defeat came, you were sort of thinking, hopefully we can get back up on the horse straight away. And it just didn't really come. Obviously, they had the injury to Conor McDermott after the draw with Coleraine. And all of a sudden, it's like people always say, when the media hone in on Glentoran, things go pear-shaped. And after that, there was so much attention on us. Mick was given off afterwards, and I think everything he said that day was completely correct. But then all of a sudden, the whole season just comes tumbling down, and it's not because the media honed in on us. I think that's just a coincidence. But I would say that it was around that time. The really disappointing one was probably the last time I was on the podcast, the Cliftonville defeat at home. And from then, it just hasn't been right. You know, the Glenavon one you can sort of forgive, didn't turn up on the day. It's just spiraled out of control ever since then.
The game you're talking about is the 8th of November. The Larne game is on the 20th of October. After that win against Larne, you get a few wins, as you said. After you lose that midweek game, you do go up to Coleraine on a short week. That's the 11th of November. Like, that is 2 months ago. And it wasn't so much on the pitch, but what will be remembered about that game is first and foremost the tackle on Conor McDermott, where he was stretchered off and there was a massive amount of concern about his health. But there's also the comments from manager Mick McDermott after the game, which caught a lot of the headlines and created a bit of news itself. Mick this season seems to have not been as open with the media and hasn't been as forthcoming with talking about matches, post-match interviews and the like. Do you think it's just a coincidence that you lose McMenamin and then other wheels come off, or has that been a big impact, do you think, on the players?
Without a doubt, losing a player of Conor McMenamin's quality is going to damage any team. We were not just a one-man team. For example, see at Windsor Park when we took Linfield apart earlier in the season, I actually didn't think Conor McMenamin had that good a game, and we completely destroyed Linfield. We had Hervoy Plum in centre midfield was absolutely excellent. Shane McCartan that day was unplayable, and you've got the centre defensive pairing of Paddy McLean and Aidan Wilson, who were just absolutely outstanding as well. Had been all season. Reece Marshall, for example, he's the player that I would use as an example. So Reece Marshall, since joining, you can count on one hand, if even, the amount of bad games he's had for Glentoran. See, since the start of November, I don't think he's had a good game. And it's very unusual because he is a top quality player. He's Mr. Consistent, 8 out of 10 every single week. So it isn't just the Conor McMenamin thing. It's just the whole team is just horribly out of form. We tried a new formation and it didn't work. And obviously we do have injuries, but you can't use that as an excuse because Glentoran have this massive squad. We've signed 47 players since Mick McDermott took over. So you can't say, oh, injuries. 47 players in 3.5 years is a huge turnover of players. So you can't use that as an excuse, especially if the management's coming out and saying, we're depleted but not weakened. That's a phrase Mick would always use, the management would always use. We're depleted but not weakened. We've got players out, but we're not weakened because we've got squad depth. But, it's just, it's the whole thing's just, the wheels have came off.
It absolutely has. We go to Tuesday, the 8th of November, and Larne are sitting on top of it, but Glentoran are second, 12 games played. They're 1 game in lieu against Larne. They've got 31 points. They've only dropped 5 points at that stage of the season. Yes, you've had a poor result against Glenavon that you probably didn't want, but it's all in your hands, and you're going to have a banana skin here or there. And the other factor there is, of course, you're always going to be tied to your rivals Linfield. They're sitting on 23 points. You've got 8 points on them. That was obviously bigger at one point. And now we go to the table as we read it today. And since then, you've only picked up 4 points. That is such a turnaround. You are bottom of the league based on any form charts. You do it based on 5 games, 6 games, 7 games. You talked about formation. That's been something I've been bringing up here. You not only lost McMenamin, you lost McCartan due to suspension. You changed things about the team. Has it just been week to week, poor results, poor performances, not getting the best out of players? Or has there been a certain trend that people aren't seeing them for 90 minutes week on week that we're potentially missing?
You were saying earlier on that Glentoran are creating news. Well, I wish we were creating as many chances as we were news, because we're not creating chances at all. Saturday was the prime example of that, but this is just a running theme over the last few weeks. We're not offering, Jay Donnelly looks extremely isolated. He looks like he's playing up front on his own. Rory Donnelly hasn't had a good season, in my opinion, in most Glenmen's opinion. I think that's clear to see, but he gets picked every week. We're lacking that natural width. Hopefully Niall McGinn can add something to that. It's yet to be seen. It's very early days. Surprised he started at the weekend. But yeah, we're not creating chances at all. In my opinion, our best performance in the last few months was away to Cliftonville. Away to Cliftonville, we did create a good few chances, and it was a lack of finishing. Danny Perkins probably could have had a couple himself. I thought we were really good that night. We got sucker punched late in the game. Midfield's probably been a problem since 2019. And it hasn't been sorted. I think Shannon Clucas gives us something different in there, certainly, but he's not exactly an attacking midfielder. Like I say, Shane McCartan comes back. He always looks to make something happen, but it is a problem. Hervoy Plum's on the bench at the minute because he's got this ankle injury and it's reoccurring. It's very, very niggly, very hard to get rid of. I think they don't want to rush him back, but he was really the midfielder who was making things happen for us.
The other side of this story is revolt in the stands, revolt on the terraces. We saw some ugly scenes after the game there against Larne, and from the fans looking for Mick McDermott to step away from his role. Does that come from results on the pitch, or is it somewhat of a culmination? I guess what I'm reflecting on is there was the comments last week or week and a half ago from the manager, which has been reported that he was referring to fans who held up a Mick Out banner at Moona Park, and it's been reported by some places that he was referring to some of the fans that were holding that banner called balloons. Did that somewhat ignite further frustration within fans that he was potentially dismissing some frustration or criticisms they had for his role in the results recently?
Yeah, the balloons thing was the story read different in the headline. I don't think he was referring to everyone at the time as balloons, and he said it was off the record. We can't say for sure whether it was or not. It doesn't matter anyway. I don't think he should have said. I don't think he should give anyone a stick to beat him with, and obviously that's going to create headlines. On Saturday, I don't think it's because he called people balloons that they were that angry, because Alan McDonald was one of the nicest men in football, and he received the same treatment. Roy Corley's our most successful manager of all time, and he received treatment similar like that. I think was away to Armagh, and I've seen that happen a few times down the years. So he's not the first person. I think that Glentoran are famous for car park protests. I said to my mate when we're coming out, I was at the Oval on Saturday, and when I finished, I went, "Well, he's probably glad that it's raining," but that didn't stop them because they're hardy breed protesters. That didn't stop them from standing out in the rain and protesting. So I think it's very much on the pitch. It's results on the pitch. It's a lack of success over this inverted quote project, as they say, in the 3.5 years has frustrated people a lot because, as I say, the turnover of 47 players and the money invested, and this is the first time, because it hasn't been great at other stages, but this is the first time it's really bad. Like it's really bad.
Is it slightly exacerbated by how good they were? Is that slightly a part of the frustration because it's complete yin and yang? It's, for me, one of the best runs I've ever seen a side play for the first 10 games of the season. It was reported there by Marshall Gillespie that 5 losses in a row in the league. It's the first time they've done that since the 1930s. Is that a part of it, that this can work, but it's just not right now?
I think that might be part of it. I think it might be because history just repeats itself. It's like Glentoran going these runs of 13 to 15 games unbeaten, and then, or wins even, and then the whole thing just falls apart. And I do sort of think that they were lucky. I think the management were probably a bit relieved that Larne playoff game was the last game for 2 months, because it was heading that way towards the end of last season. People were very frustrated. The results weren't great. The performances weren't great. And it was a summer of discontent. It was, there was nothing even happening. It was just rumours, and there was just chat. There was just all this real animosity coming from the Glenmen, or maybe fans from other clubs mixing it a bit. And I think that this pre-season came at the right time. So I'm not surprised that it's happened now, because I did think at the start of the season, is like, if this falls apart and we go on another bad run, things are going to turn grim, which of course they have.
Mick McDermott is a manager who came into the league clearly as an outsider. He is straight talking. He's really brash. He is confident in his own abilities. He talked about how some of the beloved heroes of Glentoran have somewhat been through this as manager. Has he ever been fully loved, fully embraced by the fan base, or has there always been a bit of a cold relationship between fans and Mick, and perhaps the hierarchy of the club in its current state?
No, I think in that first full season, Glenman really bought into Mick, really bought into everything he said. He was a man who came to the Irish League with bright ideas. He'd been there, he'd done it, he'd seen these professional leagues around the world. He'd been well travelled. So he came in and he was doing a lot of media interviews, and he was on podcasts, and I liked what I heard. I thought, this is a man who's talking sense, and he knew all the right things to say. And there was obviously the whole when we beat Linfield in Boxing Day back in the Westburn, Glentoran Supporters Club up in the shoulders, the sunrise in the east and all that. He was just, he had Glenmen eaten out of his hands. And I remember listening to Gareth Fullerton talk about it, and he was like, he went out to the media and he brought out a bottle of whiskey, and he was giving the media, a drink of whiskey, and people were like, oh, that's just nice of him to do that. And then I think he lost some of the support when he signed Jay Donnelly, certainly. I think that was the first thing, because it sort of made people think he's going beyond the wishes of some Glenmen. He's going above the station. That's just what I was reading at the time. So I think he then started to lose some then. And then I think it was a collection of things after that. And once you lose Glenmen, they're very hard to get back. But it was a collection of maybe performances or lack of success and some sound bites and the Twitter stuff. They didn't like the Twitter stuff was maybe winding some people up too.
He's definitely not beloved by other fan bases, let's just say, because I believe Mick has come out and what could be seen as criticising of the league. I would say it's more he is bringing forward a lot of ideas that some people don't feel are traditionally a part of what makes the Irish League the Irish League. They see him as someone who wants change, and for people that don't want change from other clubs, they would rather him not see success, I believe, because then it says, oh, your ideas aren't the same. But outside of that, we see the protests now. You say we've seen it before with other managers. The difference here is that he is, in its current setup, he is completely connected to the club. He was brought in by Ali Poor. He is a part of the setup here at Glentoran beyond just being the manager. Even if poor results were to continue, it's very unlikely that he is not the manager by the end of the season based on results alone, surely.
I imagine it'll go one of two ways. Obviously he might make the decision to step away himself. When he first came here, he said that he didn't want to be a manager. He says he wanted to be a director, but we needed a pro license manager, and Gary Smith didn't have a pro license. So he stepped into the managerial hot seat. That story's in the BBC. Anyone can go read it now. He said that himself. He finds himself in that managerial hot seat. I'm pretty sure that one day he will step away from it, but he will still remain at the club. And I'm not, I might be in a minority with this here, and I'm fine with that. I think that Mick does bring good ideas to the table, and I think that he does have something to offer, and I always have. And he gets criticized by people for going into the media and coming up with these ideas, but I think a lot of them are okay. Like, I think a lot of them make sense and they're worth discussing. When COVID was here, he was the only one bringing ideas to the table about what we're going to do if we're going to be able to complete the season, for example. One of two things has to happen. It's either Ali Poor looks and goes, we're not going to make Europe. This is going to cost me more money. Glentoran's wage bill must be like north of £1 million a year. You know what I mean? Like and we do have good income streams now, so it's not like he's funding the whole thing, but he funds a lot of it. So he needs to say, look, maybe we need to change things up a bit, or maybe Mick just decides himself, it's not worth it, and steps aside and maybe takes on the director of football role that Roy Coyle currently has, or takes up something similar to what Desi Curry's doing at the minute, and he's like general manager of the club. I do think that he will be there in some capacity, and then that's a whole different debate because people are like, well, what manager would want to work under him? But I don't think we should worry about that right now. I think that we just need the right decision needs to be made for the club, and hopefully they can come to that by sitting down and going, can we do better? This is the first time, in my opinion, this is the first time that you can't spin it in any way that things are okay. If we had a one on Saturday, or going into Saturday, you could have spun it, because if we had a one on Saturday, we're right back in it, because we would have won on Saturday. We've got 3 games in hand. You'd be quite positive. And we would have been 2 points off the top then. But losing on Saturday there, it was one of them games, almost like a final. The whole thing's now gone.
He's out of it now, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would take a absolute miracle and a serious collapse at the top. We've got, for a start, 4 of our 5 fixtures after the split are away from home. So it's a mammoth task anyway. Even if you've got a 2-point lead at the top of the table going into the split, that's a mammoth task. So to be going into the split with 4 away games is very difficult. So I just can't see us pulling back enough points now. The best we can hope for is a European playoff.
Is that what it is now? I have a lot of fans somewhat come to peace with the idea that what could have been a historically incredible season is now over. It was a spell, and now it's looking ahead. It's trying to do as best as possible. It's trying to ruin as many other teams at the top of the table's season as possible, and it's trying to wash your own face and get to automatic European qualification or get in by hook or by crook. That's the aim, because let's put real lines here. Let's put real numbers to it. There is a fair amount of games we played. We're still talking in the top teens here, but not qualify from Europe. How bad a result of a season is that, do you think?
I think it's an absolute disaster. I think that Glentoran have to be qualifying for Europe every year, and not because I think that it's not like it used to be, where if Glentoran don't qualify for Europe, we hedged all our bets on massive contracts for the likes of Gary Hamilton or massive contracts, banking on the fact that we'll qualify for Europe, and then we didn't qualify for Europe, so then we went into financial ruin. It's not like that at the minute, but because we are full time, because of the level of investment, because of the squad that we have, we've went around the last few years cherry picking Glenavon and Cliftonville's best players, and Cliftonville are sitting top of the league. You know what I mean? I think it is a bit of a disaster if we don't qualify for Europe. Of course, the Irish Cup is still very much there. We've got Portadown away in the Irish Cup. Lose that, and I honestly don't. That could be dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't want that to be the case. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he says he's thinking of not going back the rest of the season because of how sort of toxic the Oval is at the minute, and that's not the way it should be.
Well, we talked about the scenes that happened after this game. Larne come into town, get to the Oval. They had some brilliant chances to really seal this game away, but it's a fairly ugly looking header from Lee Bonus, which seals the 3 points for Larne. At the end of the game, you could hear the boos, at least I could from the radio, ring out loud. Like, Larne have been top or in around the top the entirety of the season. Losing 1-0 to them is not some sort of disaster. It's poor, and it puts you somewhat in a position where your dreams of the league title are faded significantly. But as we alluded to, it's all the other results. It's the loss against Ballymena. It's the loss on Boxing Day. There's been some ups and downs performance wise, but it's not resulted in any sort of great run of form points wise. And like I said, the only win they've had since that 1-1 draw against Coleraine has been against Portadown away, and they're bottom. So bottom of the form table. Let's say some nice things about Larne. They've had a weird Christmas festive season that they're coming out of. Other teams looked like they were going to come up and swipe them away, but with a win like this keeps them up in and around that area. And in January now, they're busy. They're changing up the team. And it looked as though they had plenty of energy against Glentoran, or did you feel as though Glentoran were opening up at the back and giving them opportunities to find space and get their shots away?
Well, I'll be honest, and this might be a bit of a hot take, but I thought that Larne were better in the 4-0 defeat. The Glens, they were pretty good that day. When we beat them 4-0, it was the Leroy Miller going off as sort of the turning point of that game. On Saturday, it was a nothing game at half time. McGinn blasted one over from about 7 yards. That was really our only chance. There wasn't many chances from Larne either. They played against the wind. It was their keeper literally took a by ball, and it went, I can't even remember actually if it was goal kicker or he kicked it out of his hands. It went about 100 yards in the air, straight up and straight back down again. It was
the wind at the Oval can really dictate games during these months. I've been there, I've seen it.
I've seen two games in a row a ball blow into the net from a corner through the wind, so it can be a bit of a disaster, but they really struggled to cope with the wind in the first half. I think that sort of made it a non-event in the first half. In the second half, the Glens came out and had the majority of possession. Larne didn't go into Glentoran's half in the second half until about 15 minutes, and then the game turned, and they had the opportunity for the bonus header that they took. Was pretty scrappy. I think that probably Marcus Kane and Paddy McLean could have done better. They were both in between bonus, and don't know, it's probably a bit harsh to blame Aaron McCarry, to be honest with you. Maybe could have got down a bit quicker, but you can't blame the keeper for that, I suppose. But yeah, they did have loads of energy. You're right there. They just bided their time. They had patience. They certainly in the second half created a hell of a lot more than what we did, which wouldn't have been difficult. We created nothing. We didn't have a shot on target the whole game.
Yeah, they hit the crossbar. A few of the other players were through in the first half, of course. Paul O'Neill, if he sorted out his feet, he could have hammered it home. But at the minute, Larne, they've reshaped their team very slightly. Micheál Glynn's now in there at their left wing back. It's interesting to see how they'll get going. It's interesting you said about you probably felt they played better in the 4-0 defeat. Right now, Larne aren't in their free-flowing best. Early in their season, after that draw, they started to really turn on the style. Right now, it feels like they're trying to build themselves up, and it'll be interesting to see what other transfer business they do. For yourselves, the big signing of the window so far is Niall McGinn. He comes in probably at the worst time you could come in as a big signing, when there's anxiety on the terraces and he's got all this pressure put on him. As is he going to be the savior? I don't think a lot of Glen fans see him as a savior. I think they see him as, okay, we'll see what he can do here. But other teams are trying to put that title on him and see if he doesn't save your season, it hasn't really worked out. And of course, interesting enough, you have brought back two lone players. You've brought back O'Connor and Jordan Jenkins. Are they likely to feature, or do you see them potentially being a part of... I know Kieran O'Connor was on the bench there on Saturday, but could they be a part of this rumoured package that could go elsewhere?
Well, here comes the speculation, but basically, so Jordan Jenkins and Kieran O'Connor were allegedly recalled to be part of a package deal to try and sign Reece Campbell from Dungannon.
Who did not start for Dungannon on Saturday.
Now, Kieran O'Connor has been registered for two clubs this season, but he's also played for two. He came on as a substitute on the first game of the season for Glentoran against Larne. And the talk...
Registration!
Yeah.
Yes!
So the talk is that we recalled him from loan without realising that he couldn't...
Forgot about
play.
it.
Yeah, couldn't play. The most awkward thing about this is, Peter, the Glentoran announced that Niall McGinn would be wearing number 19, which is Kieran O'Connor's shirt number. And, so to try... And then Niall McGinn went out in the pitch the other day with 38 in the back, and Kieran O'Connor's on the bench with 19. So that is the talk. I don't know if it's true or not. It's just speculation, but that is the talk. Is we tried to recall two players, be part of a deal for Reece Campbell, who would have been a super signing in my opinion.
Unbelievable signing. He's the one player where I've looked at for particularly this season, but last season as well. Destined to be top six. Dungannon do not need to let him go. It will have to be a package for that to happen. But I talk in this podcast a lot about Glentoran could do with a bit more wide help. What a dream player he would be for you guys. Would need to work his way into the starting lineup, but again, this is all speculation. But would be a brilliant signing if possible. Hey, I'm surprised Ali Roy's gone. I'm surprised maybe on loan. I thought maybe a number 11 could have been McGinn's.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why he went for 19, but he went for 19 anyway. And then it just seems that I suppose that people are maybe doing the maths. They're maybe working it out themselves, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a behind the scenes sort of guy, but we didn't. We've seen him on the bench, and but I haven't seen Reece Campbell down the Oval or having cups of coffee or making East Belfast coffee shops or hotels. So the rumor mill hasn't quite stopped yet, but hopefully it delivers. Hopefully, I would love Reece Campbell, and I don't see how Jordan Jenkins is going to fit in. To be honest with you, I imagine he will go elsewhere.
Yeah, that would be a quality signing for Glentoran if it was to come. But again, all speculation. Talking about Niall McGinn very quickly. How did he do? He hasn't had a lot of minutes for Dundee. Was it just a case of feeling out the league, getting himself going, or did you see some glimpses of the quality that man possesses?
Well, he certainly sees. He had a couple of. He got the ball in our half of the pitch a couple of times and was picking out passes that maybe other Irish League players wouldn't see. He was putting three balls through, but he didn't have a lot of the ball, to be honest with you. He didn't have a bad game necessarily, I suppose. As in, he didn't do anything wrong, but you couldn't say he had a good game either. The one thing I would say is he doesn't look like he has any less legs than anyone else on the pitch, which is probably everyone's biggest concern. He was the furthest man forward probably for most of the game, with Jay Donnelly dropping a bit deeper. But he didn't look like he was running out of legs. And I do want to say too on the game there, because it felt like it was just sort of like slagging off the Glens. Larne were worth their 3 points in the end, and they certainly came good. So fair play to them. Didn't want it to sound like Larne only won because we were rubbish. It wasn't like that at all.
Well, as our final little moment on this little Glentoran section, you have McCartan back in the team finally. Any word on when you could get your other Northern Ireland international back playing in green, black or white?
Yeah, so I've heard that he will be back training next week. We could maybe see him on the pitch against Portadown in the Irish Cup, perhaps, or maybe they'll leave him out for that one and go a week after just to be sure. I'm sure it'll take a bit to get up the fitness, but in reality, it hasn't been that long without him, but it's felt like an absolute lifetime. So he will be welcomed back into the fold, and it's good to see him. Abe Wilson came off the bench the other day, so it's good to see him back too. So every cloud, we'll try and make some positives. They're all coming out of the recovery room and into the fold again.
It may not be fun now at the Oval, but some teams have other kind of problems, have somewhat middle class, top of the table problems. I'm talking about one of the teams in North Belfast. One of the results of the season so far. They take care of business against Linfield at home. The euphoria there up at Solitude was incredible. That Chris Lowe tackle is going to be one of the moments of the season. No matter what happens, they run out 1-0 winners. And all they've got to do to keep this fantastic run going, they had the lead in their hands, was to go down to Taylor's Avenue and take care of business against, admittedly, a very tricky Carrick Rangers team. Cliftonville were 3-1 up at halftime. Ends 3-3. What is going on with Cliftonville? That is Glenavon type shenanigans there from both teams, actually, really. I'm sure you'll be happy to see other fan bases have a tiny dose of pain, but you'll be happy to have the points against Linfield, clearly, if you're a Reds fan, but you could be dreaming about the 2 points that could have been for a long time this season there. They had the game in their hands and they let it slip on Friday night.
Yeah, what a game. BBC just picked up a really good one there. There's been a few stinkers on the BBC, but this was a really good game. Carrick just never give up. They just went all out. They went for it. Taylor's Avenue's a bit of a nightmare for teams this season. And I thought the really Carrick had I was sitting thinking the other day, if I was to ever do a preview of the Irish League, I'm just gonna say Carrick going to start really well, secure their place in the division and then just give up for the rest of the season, go on the beach in December. Because that's basically what I thought it looked like. But no, 3-1 down, fair play to Carrick. They came back and a game with some really good goals and some really good passes as well, for that matter. Quality was very high.
Look, everyone is probably sick of all us media types giving a massive parade for young Sean Moore, but he has got talent, and that goal is just an encapsulation of the skills and the confidence he has to drop that shoulder, nick a past a player, and sink that ball is just amazing. Amazing stuff. Other great goals, of course, from Hale and Levi Eyes getting a goal, but they left the door open. I know Gartside had to come off for the veteran Darty, and the second goal, the ball just goes across the 6-yard box. Defender or goalkeeper deal with it, didn't happen. And then, pretty much with one of the final few kicks of the game, in injury time, Lloyd Anderson, absolutely loving it, gets it at 3-3. That's how it ends. Stuart King can motivate these teams in the big games, and look, Cliftonville join a big roster of teams. Crusaders have fallen there. Linfield have fallen there. And you'll just hope that they'll not live to regret that result, as well done for Carrick. But that is so frustrating for Cliftonville because they're looking good. I put a poll up on the Twitter because I thought everything's looking really close right now, and we're going into this part of the season where we've all seen a massive part of how all these teams play, how they set up, how they deal with the big games, and everybody can argue for most of the teams that are up there. But I asked, who is the real favourite? And I absolutely believed up until Friday night that Cliftonville were the clear favourites at this stage. They have a lot of home games against the top teams. They look good at the top games. They are looking excellent at home. And they had a result like Friday's in them, but it didn't seem that they would have it consistently. And they've responded really well from any of these type of results, but that is a sickener. But give it to Carrick Rangers. They fought, and Stuart King had a mile wide smile on his face, but a manager who is also boasting great results and a wily smile of his own Kearney. The informed team in the league. They've got a nice little run of fixtures. Yes, they've got Cliftonville coming up, but they are looking so slick. They're almost having their own mini Glentoran-esque run at the minute. Coleraine completely walk over Portadown at home, and it just seemed to be another easy day at the office for the Bandsiders. 4-1 it ends.
Well, I was thinking when I was watching this that Portadown probably had the old classic, "Oh lads, we've gone too early" by scoring that early goal. Bit of a shambles at the back for Coleraine, which isn't like them. Yeah, the Greg Moorhouse will be thanking their defenders for that opportunity to snuck in at the back post or the front post just to nip it in. But what a response from Korean. Again, it was a game with some great football, some really nice football. Jamie Glacken with the lovely cross. So yeah, it was some really nice football played from Korean. They are absolutely flying at the minute, and it's good to also see Michael McCrudden back in the goals. He obviously it looked like he just disappeared off the face of the earth for a while. He's back in the goals, back doing well for Korean, so they'll be thankful for him.
That really suits him well. Probably just that there isn't a massive amount of pressure on him. He can be a part of this rotational team, and Coleraine really seems to be this rotational team where Lynch will come in, they'll come out, you'll have Glacken come in, and it will change up with Shevlin be the real cornerstone of it. And we've seen those wide players come in. They've brought in Fife now. They brought in Andy Scott from Larne, which clearly Oran Kearney had a real notion about him. They've paid a fee to bring that young wide player in. Wasn't like he was pulling up trees at Larne. Probably suits a team like Coleraine who play high wide men rather than with Larne. It's the more deep wing back kind of role. But after taking the early lead, it was like Portadown just made Coleraine angry. It's like flicking the Hulk on the nose because they just came back and just got 3 before halftime, and it was all over at that point. And Nell Curry, a dejected man at the end of that, incredibly disappointed with his team. He didn't want to name names, he said in his post-match interview. But Portadown are making moves. They lose Jordan Jenkins. They couldn't play Carfrail there. They themselves were on the big striker hunt. They bring in Benny Igion in from Dundela, one of the numerous Dundela players who has exited Wilger Park this season. He's a bit taller and stronger type target man, feels over the top, but he's a big, bold striker. But again, he's really not done much beyond championship level in his career. So that's a big step up for him. But strangely, one of the most shocking transfers, or ones that completely took me off guard when I looked at my phone. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And I saw Paul McElroy is signed for Portadown from Ballymena. There's been a big exodus from Ballymena as well, but he was not listed as one of the players. Yes, he has not been getting a lot of games for the Sky Blues, but their top goal scorer, one of their top goal scorers from last season, 15 goals. Yes, a lot of them were penalties. He's moved. It's not really clear what deal was made there. He's moved back to Portadown. He was there for a short term, I was reading. Portadown have been crying out for an experienced striker. That is what they're getting with Paul McElroy.
Yeah, Portadown's problem has been they're lacking goals, mind you. If you had to watch the highlights of the game on Saturday, their defending was a bit shambolic too for a couple of goals, certainly, and they'll not be too happy with that. But yeah, Paul McElroy, an experienced player at this level, he's got goals in him. I'd just say, although a lot of them were penalties last season, it doesn't really matter. If you know where the net is, you get a knack for scoring. I didn't know who they were going to bring in. They obviously tried to bring back Adam Sally, and that didn't work. You look around the league, there's not exactly too many surplus top centre forwards. If you look at it, Paul McElroy is an upgrade on Jordan Jenkins, in my opinion. And certainly he's got the pedigree. Jordan's still young enough. He can still have a good RC career, but he's yeah, I think they've done good business there. The exodus from Dundela. I know that Dundela aren't too happy about some of the players that have moved on. They've lost half their team. I don't know. It's people are saying Portadown are planning for the championship next year, but the McElroy signing makes me think that they're thinking all's not lost.
It's an interesting thing. If you were a Portadown fan, I don't know what you'd be thinking, because you're probably looking at it thinking, okay, you've got a couple of Dundela players who were clearly top end championship players, they're playing for Dundela. They're playing in one of the better championship teams. They come in, get a chance to prove themselves again. And Paul McElroy seems to be the first player that they've signed from another Premiership team in a long time that isn't a lone player. And we'll have to see if it pays off for them. They are running out of games massively, but they will be slightly aided in this game week at least by the fact that the team they take Paul McElroy off, Ballymena United, don't give one of their rivals down there, Dungannon Swifts, any points as Ballymena win out 2-0. Ballymena, we talk about the exodus out of Wilger Park. Well, Ballymena, for their own choice on putting some players on the transfer list, you've now seen Parkhouse move to the Reds, move to Cliftonville, as a bit of a prove-it chance for him. He was on the transfer list. You also see Keelan Loughran go to Loughgall to try and help their promotion push. Connor Keeley left. He requested the transfer. He's down at Drogheda, and they lose Paul McElroy up top. They have plenty of strikers, and Dave McDade and Jordan Gibson. So they may be down on numbers, but they're still getting the results. 2-0, Dave McDade wrapping that up. Dungannon Swifts will feel as though potentially a chance to get some points lost.
It was a soft penalty for them to give away, really. Don't think that you needed to go through it. It was a nailed on penalty, in my opinion. Dungannon, although to be honest, didn't really matter the result in the end. But they'll be aggrieved because they were definitely offside. It was definitely offside. The second goal was 95th minute. It was too late to achieve anything anyway. But they can certainly be aggrieved. The linesman was right in line, but I don't understand how he didn't flag. It was bizarre. But yeah, Ballymena. Really, it's going to be like the scene from Fresh Prince where Will Smith's just standing in the room on his own with nothing surrounding him, because it's just going to be David McDade in his own, I think.
It's a case of this is a chance to just change the squad. Is this maybe bringing down the budget? Again, it's not really clear what the McElroy deal was. There potentially a nominal fee put across? Is that a moving on a wage thing? Regardless, it feels as though, particularly this win against Dungannon Swifts, Ballymena, even if they go on a bit of a dip, they shouldn't really be dragged into down in that part. You'd have to have a number of teams go on a big run and them just to fall. So it's a bit of a weird purgatory, isn't it? Because they still could get 7th and roll the dice in Europe, but in turn, it feels like if there's any team right now you're looking at next season going, bar of course the teams near the bottom, that you're going, okay, they're a team in rebuilding. Ballymena look like they're a team in complete rebuild mode, be it next season and beyond.
Yeah, well, Ballymena are sitting. There's that wee battle between Ballymena, Glenavon, and Carrick are maybe just still in there too, to be honest. For that 7th spot and the potential last playoff place. They probably need maybe a bit of a rebuild. Ballymena, they have quite a lot of older players there. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe Ross Redmond's still 25. It feels like he's been around for about 30 years. I remember when he signed for the Glens, I thought he was about 30. It's mad to think that people were calling for David Jeffrey's head earlier in the season, offered a resignation. Things could have been so much different for Ballymena had the board accepted the resignation, but they've got a bit of form about them. They're maybe a wee bit like Glenavon. You never know quite what they expect, but I'd say their fans are probably pretty content.
It's like they're a less dramatic Glenavon. Like, look at this. Glenavon take down Crusaders midweek. A Crusaders team which I was getting all hyped. I was a prisoner of the moment. I was like, look at this team. They've got all their players back. They're looking fit. They're looking great. They are like the best team to play against the top 6. All they need to do is not wreck it against the bottom 6. And then they wreck it against the bottom 6 in Glenavon. A game they did not need to lose, a bit like with Cliftonville and Carrick. And then Glenavon take that really great home performance against Crusaders. The Crusaders had a poor showing in that game. And then Linfield just walk all over them at home. This team is as topsy-turvy, is as shake the 8-ball and see what it says than you could ever be. They get completely caught up in the highs and then get resilient in the lows. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I checked the scores. I was sitting at the Oval on Saturday and I checked the scores and said to my mate, "Oh, it's one each Glenavon Linfield." It's like Glenavon just don't know what to be at. Like that's they beat the Cruise midweek. They could go on and win that. And then I checked my phone at full time and I was 6-1. And it's just one of those. You're not surprised though. That's the thing. They've taken a few really really big hammerings in the last few years at Mourneview Park as well. They've taken a few big hammerings. Getting hammered by Linfield isn't exactly a massive surprise. But at the same time, you wouldn't have been surprised if Glenavon had went out and hammered Linfield.
I would not have been surprised by that at all, and it's just a strange week in the world of Glenavon. Will they potentially see this as the opportunity now where, like Ballymena, they're behind Ballymena, but a chance to rebuild themselves? They've got a nice little young spine in their team, but is Matthew Fitzpatrick going to be a part of it? We saw with Crusaders that Johnny McMurray is now officially on the transfer list. He joins Dean Ebe on there, two strikers who are on there. Clearly, Crusaders want to jump in and grab Fitzpatrick. Is Cash and McMurray going to be the thing that gets us over the line? We don't know. But Crusaders show that they've got a decent amount of attacking flair in a week where they scored 2 away to Glenavon. They get 3 against Newry City at home. It felt like a result that was always on the cards. But we have to talk about the big long goal from Jordan Forsyth. He scored a couple of goals now in recent weeks, but Stephen Maguire, he just concedes long goals. He's conceded this one, and didn't he also concede that really long one from Greg Moorhouse? I feel like this is longer, but he's been punished for taking a few steps away from his goal line.
Yeah, Jordan Forsyth taking a leaf out of the book of Andrew Mitchell's worldies. He's taken over that mantle, has he? It was a peach of a goal. It was the keeper wasn't that far off his line, so it was pure audacity to have a go, but he had a go and he beat him, and he'll be absolutely delighted with that. Of course, his teammate Dean Ebe putting himself, talk about putting yourself in the shop window. They've obviously transfer listed him, and he's all 4 goals in 2 games, flying.
And yes, one of those games was against the bottom side in the Championship, Dergview. But anytime I've seen Dean Ebe this season, it feels as though he hasn't had the confidence to really assert himself on the game, and he's trying to make a quick impact off the bench, and he's got height, he's got a tiny bit of pace on him, and it feels like he's closer to that kind of target man. And look, Jordan Owens is making a little foray in the team as well. Perhaps this is just a bit of a Dean Ebe is the man they wanted all along, but that would be a huge blow for Glenavon if we were to lose. Matthew Fitzpatrick doesn't look like it's on the cards, but we'll have to see what Crusaders do. They're clearly in for a striker some way, somehow.
I did see in the Sunday Life, and my eyes lit up. Stephen Looney wrote that Glentoran are interested in signing one Matthew Fitzpatrick of Glenavon, so that would be a welcome addition. Because we don't have very many goals.
Yeah, I was saying that as well. I thought that was very, very interesting. Do you think Matthew Fitzpatrick can play wing back? Or
yeah, well, his left back is normal position. He can play midfield. Yeah, we love strikers, left backs, and goalkeepers. So if you tick any of them boxes, apply within.
Let's look ahead to a wonderful mystery tour of unlimited potential that will be this weekend. 6 games, weather pending. And one which, well, an area that has been struggling with the weather down at the Newry Showgrounds. Pressure on, lights are on, the BBC's in town. It is along the lines of a get-right game for Glentoran if they can. Newry are probably second if I totaled up all the results. Second bottom, along with Glentoran there, and when it comes to the most recent form book. But what Newry bring to every game is fight. And that pitch has been a bit muggy in recent times. Perhaps a bit of a scrappy fighty game is exactly what Glentoran need on what, if the weather is anything to go by right now, an absolutely Baltic Friday night.
Yeah, I've seen the temperatures have dropped to -3 this week. I think it's to be pretty mild though in Newry on Friday. So I'm hopeful that game will go ahead. And I say hopeful because I do think that we need to get Saturday out of the system.
You have to play a game at some point here. Like you're 3 games behind everybody else. The whole Ballymena game called off. Another Ballymena game called off for you guys due to waterlog at the Oval. But I can imagine until that first goal goes in for Glentoran. If it in fact goes in, it will be tension in the stands at the Newry Showgrounds.
Well, it wasn't easy last time we went there, and we were in good form when we went there. Their goalkeeper was inspired that day. So it'll be a tough game. We know it'll be a tough game. We'll be under no like Glenman will be under no illusions. The players will be under no illusions. But I would say that this is a game they'll be looking. The management will be looking. The players will be looking at the next two games, and they'll be thinking these are winnable fixtures. These need to be needs to be when we kickstart our season to settle some of the animosity and some of that sort of anxiety that's floating around Glentoran supporters because we've only got one game on Ballymena, so you need to be careful. You know, you don't want to be all of a sudden. It'd be a big shock if we were to fall out of the top six, but you do need to be careful, and you can't get complacent.
Absolutely not. Newry, well, there's been bigger shocks, but I don't know how that you could call that. I think whoever scores first is likely to go in. Do you think you'll be telling you're shouting? Do you think you'll be shouting from the sidelines to players as soon as they cross the halfway line to give it a dig and see what you can do? Who probably has the best long range shot in your team? McCartan, maybe?
Probably Sean Murray. Sean Murray scored that worldly on his debut, away to Dergview, and then he's had a few since then. He's had a few opportunities. I think he doesn't score many, but the ones he has, he's had a few digs. Or Bobby Burns, he likes to have a shot from anywhere. He doesn't score too many, so he likes to stick his laces through them.
I didn't think I'd be saying this earlier on in the season, but that could be a weird one to call. But surely Glentoran will come out with they'll take it hook or by crook, winning ugly. You'll take it no matter what, and that probably is the way it might go down. A team that would win ugly or just win anyway, it could bounce off their back heel or however it could go in. Portadown host Carrick Rangers. This feels super key to the Mid-Ulster side if they're to start to build their progress and move up the league. I think they lost both their games against Carrick Rangers already this season, so this time it's at Shamrock Park. Do you feel as though this is a chance for Portadown to do bits?
I do. I think that this is an opportunity for Portadown. They've got the new players in. I know the Carrick are a really hard team, but Carrick are on the road. It's a really good opportunity for Portadown to get some points on the board. Whether it'll happen or not is another thing. But just being at home, there seems to be Niall Curry seems to have brought in a new sort of positivity. He's a positive guy anyway, Niall Curry. So he's brought in this new air of positivity where everything isn't all doom and gloom. So he could Portadown could deliver something there, or even a point. Even if they got a point, they'd be happy enough because every single point counts at this stage of the season. And Dungannon are creeping away from them, and you have to feel, if Dungannon get another win on the board, then that could be curtains for Portadown.
Well, they got a draw against Dungannon, didn't they, on the 2nd of January or so, which didn't really change things up. A bit the way where I would not criticise Linfield, but I would highlight that with Linfield, they're not getting results against the top 6 sides. That could be the thing that would mute their progress. Portadown probably need to get results around the teams around them, and I think Newry's beating Carrick, Dungannon's beating Carrick. You need to start copying those boys and getting up there, and we await, I believe, the review on the Portadown Newry case should come this week, so we will likely talk about it on the podcast, so we'll see how that maybe impacts the mentality. I probably will say this is a draw. I think they'll knock each other out, and a bit like that Dungannon game, a bit turgid and nothing really comes up. But a game that will be thrilling, a game between two sides that, I've said it before, sick of the sight of each other, easily one of the big games of the weekend that has a few little tasty ones. Coleraine go to Cliftonville. This is huge. Coleraine win this. They're already in it points wise. This puts them right into the window of title challengers. Cliftonville win it, and they start to pick things off. They swat away and say, not today, Coleraine. We're the real boys at the top of this league. Fascinating result, which probably means a draw.
It's going to be a really big fixture. I'm surprised this one wasn't chosen for the Friday night, but then I think this was in December, so maybe they didn't realise what would be on the cards. But yeah, it's going to be a really tight encounter. Neither team will want to lose, and that usually leads to one thing: a big draw. But
Big old draw.
you just don't know though, because anything can happen at Solitude. Cliftonville are so good at Solitude, so they could easily go out and win comfortably. You just don't know.
It's the two best attacking teams in the league. I don't think that's in doubt. Shamur, the Hales, Gormley's really in a groove at the minute, keeping Curran out of the team. Coleraine, they've got goals coming from everywhere, and they're looking a bit stout at the back. Will home advantage play a big role in this? It clearly did when Cliftonville played against the Blues. I want there to be a goal within the first 3 minutes, because then it will be bombastic. It'll be potentially one of the best games ever in the Irish League. I think it could be amazing, but we'll see. I cannot call it, but I'm somewhat I'm feeling Coleraine. They're my prisoner of the moment team, where I'm like, hey, they're so good. They're winning. They look so flashy. But then again, I'll say Cliftonville are great at home, and every time they've had a bad result, they've snapped back like that.
Yeah, it's one of them things. Or Coleraine, I would say, are probably the form team in the league. Would be right in saying that they're
100%.
just winning. Coleraine, when you think that they're gonna like maybe, or Cliftonville, sorry, you think when they're gonna drop points and maybe go on a wee bit of a bad run, they just win the next week. It's a really strong mentality in that squad. The only thing is, with it being such a tight, it's culture is quite a tight pitch, as well, and Coleraine play with a lot of width, and that could work in the Cliftonville's advantage. Jamie Glackham was super at the weekend, and yeah, Cliftonville could make the most of that.
You've won me over. I think maybe whoever wins it will edge it. Famous last words. I'm going to give it to Cliftonville. One team who will be loving a draw. When it comes to Irish League cliches, there's the one at the absolute top of the list, and it's Linfield just get it done. And you know what? If Linfield, so far this season, if Linfield were to lift the Gibson Cup, it feels as though it would be one of the least eventful. Like, they have just taken care of business. But when teams are taking care of business, Ballymena seem to be the team that crops up and laughs in their face and go, you were supposed to beat us, and we come up big in a really big spot. But going down to Windsor feels like a big step up for this somewhat tricky Ballymena side.
This was at Showgrounds, Ballymena Showgrounds. Mind you, I've looked at like Ballymena or Linfield going to Ballymena a few times and went, oh, that could be a potential banana skin, and then Linfield end up winning handy enough. Earlier in the season, for example, the game it was on BBC, I think they won 2-0 in the end. So I don't think that Ballymena will go to Windsor and cause any sort of upset there. I think that Linfield will be. It would have been a different story maybe if Linfield had a loss or drop points to Glenavon at the weekend. Losing to Cliftonville and then dropping points to Glenavon. But off the back of such an emphatic win, all their players seem to be in decent form. In fact, I've been reading that Joel Cooper's been in pretty poor form at the minute, but Linfield are still winning. Like, obviously, I haven't watched them, but he's a top player. So the fact that they're still winning games without him being on top of his game, just makes you think that they will swipe away anything that comes in their path.
Yeah, could be that could be a title win for Linfield, but again, Dave McDade's jumping up and in big places. But a massive game at the top of the league. Larne host Crusaders. Larne are somewhat the vampires of Inver. It's like, oh, the big bright lights of 3 p.m. and during the day. They would love the little Friday game, no doubt. This could be big. So many, like I said a few weeks ago, so many of these big top 6 battles are happening. They're coming at us thick and fast. And you win and you bounce out. Crusaders are at the minute, I think I haven't updated my little table, but they're one of the best, if not the best, against the other top 6 sides. Do they go into Inver and make things happen? Because Larne have been strong there. But I don't feel like either of them are really running at full potential.
No, I would agree. I think, like I said earlier on, Larne weren't brilliant on Saturday, but they didn't have to be. But they have a lot of attacking talent that can trouble any team. They have obviously added to their squad. They've got Glenn in there now. I think at home it's a really, really tough task for anyone to go to Inver Park and get 3 points. Crusaders, obviously, off the back of a good win themselves. Another really hard one to call, to be honest. But I do think that home advantage will maybe see Larne edge it. The Crusaders haven't had the best of form against Larne recently. I think that Larne beat them 4-1 at the same venue back in November time. And I think that that might play in the Crusaders' minds too.
Let's bang the 6 point klaxon. This is a 6 pointer, ladies and gentlemen, as Crusaders are on 45. Larne are on 48, but with a game in hand. So, Crusaders, I know what Stephen Baxter's team talk is going to be. You win and you're back in the mix again. All is forgotten about the drama that went down in Mourneview Park. That could be a real key motivator for them. Says a draw, maybe, perhaps. I think it'll be tight and they'll be a wee bit skittish and be keen not to drop things. Boring to say a draw, but if I was to give any team an advantage, I kind of think Crusaders maybe have less to lose, which I would maybe give to them, but I do think it will be somewhat of a stalemate.
Yeah, I think the Crusaders are a team that you don't want to coming at you and when they don't have anything to lose. Going all gung ho, shall we say, because they've got a bit of everything in their team. They've got the big men, they've got the wide men, they've got players who like to score from 40 yards. So yeah, it's not someone you want coming to your place when they don't have a lot on the line. But I suppose looking at it, they probably do have quite a lot on the line when you look at the league table. Like we're suppose me and you're sitting here talking as if they're not in the title challenge. They're right in the thick of it themselves. So it could be a cagey game.
Yeah, well, ultimately Larne took them to the woodshed the last time Crusaders were there. Extra motivation. Another brilliant, brilliant game. And then finally Dungannon, Glenavon. And Dungannon will look at this game as another one of those life raft matches, the same way Portadown against Carrick. It can really go either way, but after what is seen as a good run of games, getting wins against Newry, drawn against Portadown, and getting wins against Carrick, Glenavon is another thing altogether, and I kind of think maybe Glenavon get back again, but it's hard to predict anything with Glenavon.
Yeah,
I can't go for a third draw this podcast. Save me.
no, I'm not going for a draw here. Dungannon beat Glenavon obviously 1-0 at their own place back in November time, and then we going back again. Obviously, this was also at Stangmore Park. Back the last April time, it was the 3-2 thriller at the Stangmore Park. So they can get one over on Glenavon, but it is going to be pretty tough for Dungannon, I think, after coming away from Moorview, a 6-1 defeat. I think that they're going to want to prove something. But with Dungannon being at home, it is going to be a tough trip for Gary Hamilton and his men. But no, I do think that Glenavon will win this one. But like I say, they don't have a brilliant record there of late.
Matthew, delight to have you on once again, even if it's not on the funnest of circumstances, but sometimes it's nice to come on and maybe reflect on the frustrations, get that out, a bit more cathartic. But of course, you are mild-mannered and well-spoken because you are a man that is doing this on a consistent basis yourself. Let's go to Plug Town. Shout at the Oval Podcast. Tell us all about it if they haven't heard you before.
Yeah, so the most recent guest we've had on the podcast is Gary Smith. He talks about his time at Glentoran and Glenavon and the spell at Ballymena too. But it's really fascinating because there's stuff that I didn't know. He left Glenavon under a bit of a cloud with an ACL injury. Yeah, that was really interesting. And then he also talks about his time as Glentoran manager, the short-lived time of Glentoran manager and all the things that went on behind the scenes there. So bit of a scandal for everyone to listen to. That was out on Saturday. So these podcasts are out after every Glens home game. And they usually involve a player who has represented a lot of teams in the league. So there might be something of interest there to non-Glen men too.
Do you not find that really difficult and hard that sometimes you're chatting to these guys that are legends of your club. Like I no matter what, I would find that somewhat intimidating. Or are you a chip off the old block and you're best buds no matter what?
I'd love talking to the players because I grew up watching them. And it's a bit like if you had told young Matthew Brown that he would be sitting interviewing these players, he probably would have had to pinch himself because these are players that I idolized when I was younger. But the players from the likes of Gary Smith's era, they're the best ones to interview. They're cut from a different cloth. Just rolls off their tongue. They've done so many interviews in their time. And then the players that are coming to the sort of later stage of their career, I've had Marcus Keane on twice as well and stuff. And it's like speaking to someone like Marcus Keane, it's like having a chat with your mate down the pub. That's just the sort of fella he is. So sometimes it can be daunting when you're going in. Like I didn't know what to expect of the Eddie Patterson one, which was the episode I was talking about last time I was on. But it turned out to be brilliant too. So everyone's been great. And yeah, as I say, it's the people from different eras respond in different ways.
Gary Smith wouldn't know what a TikTok is if it came up and he had his dinner. So that's somewhat of an advantage. And yeah, it's also nice to have the more experienced players. They're out of the game a bit more. They can speak their mind, say their bits and pieces, reflect on history. But it's definitely a mixed bag. But Matthew, absolute delight to have you on. Great to have you. Go check out the Shout at the Oval podcast. And hopefully I'll be chatting to you again sometime very soon. And it'll be for fun things.
See you after the Glens Irish Cup win for the 2-hour Glentoran kicking match special, Peter.
Confirmed. Big click of the pen for dramatic effect. Gonna get my little metaphorical page, give it a big tick and go, oh yeah, another cracking episode. January is a fun time of the year to do this. There's like lots of huge games happening, as we talked about, and the transfer stuff is fun as well. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you're keeping well. Thank you very much for listening all the way till the very end. Just don't click, next up. Don't worry, we're nearly there, because I have to say, hey, if you like this, you can follow me on my social media stuff. I post on there too. Sometimes I post my lovely little face. You can go to Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, search for Kicking Match, and it should bring you up. You might need a few more words if you want to listen to me through your smart speakers, which is now up by 1%. Can you believe that, boys and girls? All this annoying talk at the end, which has kind of become an internal meme throughout the program, which you're like, he's still saying the same words, and I am. It's got 1% more people doing it. Let's get the rates up. How do you do it? You say hello, smart speaker, and you say hello. Can you please play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast? Please say the full phrase, and you'll not have to shout at it for not getting it right or playing, I don't know, some random song from the 70s. Until then, tally ho. See you next week. Chat soon.